Welcome to Tiny Tours. I am Lourdes Ruh, docent at the Meadows Museum. Today we're going to look at two small polychrome wooden sculptures, one depicting St. Francis of Assisi, the other St. Anthony of Padua, measuring only 31 and 28 inches respectively. Both works were created around the end of the 17th century in Andalusia by anonymous artists. However, the St. Francis sculpture has been associated with a follower of Pedro de Mena, one of the most important representatives of the Malaga school of sculpture, and the St. Anthony's is an anonymous work of the Sevillian school. To revitalize the Catholic Church and to counteract Protestantism, painters and sculptors worked at the service of the Church, creating images as naturalistic and emotionally gripping as possible. If Italy was the brain of the Counter-Reformation, its heart was undoubtedly Spain. Sculptors and painters worked closely together. First, the sculptor carved the trunk of the figure from a piece or a column of wood. Then, the painter used a technique known as estofado, which means to finish the wooden sculpture with gilding, punched patterns, and paint. This was followed by the process of incarnation or encarnación, which means painting flesh onto the sculpture to bring it alive. This collaboration resulted in the creation of some of the greatest masterpieces of Spanish Baroque art. These two sculptures represent the two saints, both extraordinary figures in the history of Christianity. You may be familiar with the beguiling figure of St. Francis of Assisi, patron saint of animals and known for his humility and his love of God and nature. St. Anthony of Padua was a disciple of St. Francis of Assisi, and the two were not only contemporaries but closely bound in spirit, devotion, and mission. Anthony's fame spread through evangelization. For both men, poverty was a way of imitating Jesus. Now I invite you to look closely and compare the two sculptures. What is the very first thing you'd notice about them? First, let's look at the similarities. Both saints are standing, wearing the Franciscan ermine habit. The folds are decorated with only very fine golden lines. Also, their faces and feet, Anthony's shaven chin, and the infant's body, which was carved separately, show a lifelike appearance. The two of them are enhanced with glass eyes and ivory teeth, a method often used to add expressive force and naturalism. However, I believe both saints' attitude and narrative quality are strikingly different. How would you describe the St. Francis sculpture? Impressive? Intriguing? It depicts a story that took place roughly 200 years after St. Francis' death. Pope Nicholas V was visiting the saint's tomb and had a vision in which he saw his body standing on it as if he were alive. The artist carved a figure frozen in a kind of stasis. Francis looks upward in an unsettling manner, his head covered with his hood and his hidden hands folded over his chest add to the drama of this work. St. Anthony's sculpture, by contrast, is an endearing work, based on a miracle experienced by Anthony, who was praying far into the night when suddenly the room was filled with light, more brilliant than the sun. Jesus then appeared to St. Anthony in the form of a little child. The essence of the sculpture emerges through the saint's gesture and expression of surprise while he holds the Christ child lovingly in his arms. No other age or style of Christian art has been able to excel Spanish Baroque sculpture in truthfulness, an amalgam of asceticism and elegance. The sacred was undoubtedly made real. Thanks for listening. Plan to join us for more of the Meadows Museum's tiny tours.